So what do you think about when you think about art? What comes to mind when you close your eyes? Now, obviously, if you're watching this video, I have some things queued up for you. There's a painting, some woodwork, some leather, but art goes so far beyond that, right? It could be a nice glass of whiskey from your favorite artisan whiskey maker, or a nice beer or something, or a car could be art. In fact, most of the things that we enjoy in life, our instruments, our houses, our furniture, whatever the case may be, so much of it is in fact art. I'm reminded the other day I was watching an old Pink Floyd concert, Delicate Sound of Thunder, and watching David Gilmour stand up there and beginning of the concert, and there's the kind of the hushed roar of the crowd and the opening notes that are held in sustain. And as David Gilmour is standing there with the red Stratocaster strapped around his shoulder, he hits the exact notes at the exact time. And I'm thinking to myself, as a guitar player, he played that better than I've ever played anything. And he's doing it in front of thousands of people watching him perform what was to me perfection. And we look at that and go, that's art, right? And it is art. But the question I want to ask, is art artistic? Well, the knee-jerk response to that, I think for most of us, is of course art is artistic. Because you think of an artist having artistic abilities, maybe using a hand plane to shape or form a piece of wood into something that is aesthetically pleasing, or using a brush and a trowel to mold paint into something that is pleasing to the eye. Whatever the case may be, we think of the artist using their artistic abilities to create art. And that's true. But there's so much more to art than artistic abilities. And I'll even say that art is not artistic at its fundamental execution, I guess you could say. Rather, what I want to say is that art really is when you get behind the curtain and you see the process of forming something into art. What you really see is work. You see a process. And so when I was watching David Gilmour open up the song Shine On You Crazy Diamonds, and every note is perfect, perfectly timed, perfectly sustained, in perfect tonation. And I say perfect loosely because there's no such thing as perfection to a person in this world. But as far as I'm concerned, it was perfect, right? What I'm thinking of that when I watch, however, is what it took to get to that place. You know, as a young man, how much did his fingers bleed on that guitar? Well, his calluses were building up on his hands. How many canvases did Picasso throw across a room because what he envisioned in his mind wasn't displayed on the piece? How much frustration did Monet go through trying to form a pond of lilies And if we go back in our lives, we can all understand that, right? Sometime back, preschool or before, the first time we picked up a crayon and we tried to draw a sunshine. And you might go, that was pretty good sunshine. A circle with some lines coming out from it. Now try to draw a person. A circle with some lines coming out. And as we demanded more of ourselves, the art became harder. And the ability that we had failed at some point, at least it did for me, failed at some point to execute on what we desired. And so how many artists have given up on creating art because they didn't think of themselves as artistic because they weren't able to execute at the very beginning. And I think I know that if you went to most artists, how did you get to where you could make that? If you ask David Gilmour, how did you get to where you could play that song perfectly? I bet you a lot of them would answer, I hate that song. I've played it so many times. I can play it in my sleep. In fact, I've woken up playing that song in my sleep when I was trying to get rest at night. Or I spent 8 hours a day from 6th grade to 12th grade and beyond playing guitar because it was my passion. It's all I wanted to do. And besides that, I sought to learn the craft along that way. And that is really where art comes from. It comes from a process and from work. There's a book called, it's going to leave me right now, but The War of Art, where I think it's Presson who writes that book. I'm speaking just off the top of my head. But he talks about writing books is less about having a ability and more about getting to work in the morning. That he would lay out a schedule and write for 4 hours a day. And maybe nothing would come out of most days, but in some days, the art would come out. And so when we think about, is art artistic? And I say no, or many artists say no. Sure, it starts with an artistic ability, but that's just the impetus. Art is really the execution of a thought through hard work, dedication, and a system or a process of getting things done. So I think if we all sat down and thought about that, we would all agree, yeah, everything I've tried to do ever in my entire life, if I tried to execute that at a high level, I had to work really hard at it, and I had to study it, and I had to learn it, and I had to get paint on my clothes, and I had to get frustrated, and I had to learn, and that's what produced the art. So I say that all to remind us that we're all artists, whatever we do, because being an artist is just creating. So when you go to work and you turn a bolt like I did for so many years, I was creating a tight bond between two parts. I was going through a process to bring order out of disorder, you might say. And that's really what art is, bringing order out of disorder, because so much of life is automatically disordered. So we're all artists, and some of us have greater talents and abilities in certain aspects of things, sure. But many of us can do the great things that we look up to the artists that we admire, we could do those things if we were willing to put in the work. More importantly, if we didn't get discouraged at the beginning process of it. I know I don't draw because when I was like 7 or 8, I draw sometimes, but not that much. It's not my form. But I gave up when I was 7 or 8 because I couldn't execute what was in my mind. And I was just like, forget it. It wasn't enjoyable for me. And I say that because somebody's out there and they want to execute something. They have a vision of something that they want to bring into life, but they're struggling in the execution of it. And they're discouraged because the art is no longer artistic, it's frustration. And I want to say to that, it's okay. Keep going. Art isn't artistic all the time. Sometimes it's just plain work. And sometimes, a lot of times, it's just plain frustrating. Because what goes along with art and with all sorts of areas of life is learning and discovering and having something get in our way time after time. But keep going, because the art comes from pressing on and keeping going with things. So I hope that that encourages you some today. And I hope that you keep going in whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish, with whatever it is you're trying to create, or with whatever it is that you're trying to bring order out of disorder. That could be life, it could be relationships, it could be woodworking, painting, work, driving, whatever the case may be. Keep going, because the artist in you just needs to get through the hump of the work ahead to get to the art on the other side. And so, going back to that Pink Floyd concert, it opened up with the great song, "Shine On You Crazy Diamond." I want you to remember that every diamond, in order to shine, it doesn't just come from the ground shining in the light. It is picked up, looked at, studied, and ground very precisely through a long period of time by somebody who has studied the art of diamond shaping and gets the facets ground just right, so that when the light hits it, it refracts back out to the viewer. And that's you right now. That's you. And whatever you're doing, keep being ground. I know that sounds terrible. We don't want to be ground. We don't want our facets to be ground into our skin, but that's what it takes. That's what it takes. And so for thousands of years, a rock is stuck in the ground, and it's picked up out of the ground, and it's dirty, and it just maybe looks, it's not too impressive, but it's through the grinding that people can finally be able to see what it is that is inside that rock, that diamond. And really what's on the inside is a reflection of what comes from the outside. So be open to what's on the outside so that you can reflect out into the world and shine on, you crazy diamond. So thanks for watching. I hope this has brought encouragement or maybe insight to somebody. And if it has, or if you think that it could help somebody out, please share and just get the word out that people can do crazy, amazing things when they decide to and they keep going. I'm Jake Summers. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.